Welcome back, everybody, to the Late Night Chat Network year-end media review of 2024. Jay, what's going on? It's been another exciting year.
Oh, fuck, has it ever, buddy? Has it ever?
But yeah, welcome back, everybody. First and foremost, please make sure to like and subscribe if you're coming across this video on our channel for the first time. This is the Late Night Chat Network, your first stop for pop culture talk. And moving into the new year, we have a lot of exciting things planned for you guys. So make sure to join us along for the ride if you're new to the channel. And this is like, I think, our fifth or sixth annual. I really should have double checked that. I think it's our fifth annual year-end
Man,
media review, Jay, you and me, since starting the Late Night Chat Network YouTube channel and starting this show, Late Night Chat podcast show that we did on a weekly basis, moved to YouTube after audio. Me and Jay have gotten together at the end of the year, our craziest time of year between work and everything else, the holidays. You know, this is a very crazy, stressful time for a lot of folks, as you know, Jay. And
very interesting time.
but honestly, I really look forward to this conversation every year. Jay always comes over. We get together in person to record this. We go through and we talk about the things that we really enjoyed in media of every year at the end of the year. And since, we've kind of changed up Late Night Chat, our main show here on the YouTube channel, and we've added on more co-hosts as the years have gone on. I think this is the second year where we'll actually be supplying a list from the other co-hosts as well. I think maybe last year was the first time, maybe the year before, I can't recall, but we also have some other top 5 lists of things of people's favorite stuff. Some of our other co-hosts from the Late Night Chat show on the Late Night Chat Network here as well to go over today. And of course, me and Jay, we always go over usually these 4 topics, which are our favorite podcasts, movies, TV shows, and music that came out this year. And we're going to get into every one of those subjects one by one. But yeah, once again, honestly, it's just been an awesome year for the channel. It's been a great year. We've seen a lot of growth this year for the Late Night Chat Network. And we see a lot of new people tuning in. And we thank you. First and foremost, we kind of just wanted to put that out there. It's, we couldn't do this without everybody's support.
A great year, guys. And there's been support from everybody, and even just the audiences alone and the people tuning in. It's been great just to see, right?
Yeah, it really has been. And I think that's worth mentioning here at the top of the show because, as much as we look forward to doing these lists every year and getting together, and these are always fun. It is always fun to talk with JT about our favorite things. And it honestly, though, we do it for the audience, for the listeners, for the viewers of this show. So
for the ladies,
for all those ladies out there. So thank you. So and honestly, make sure to tune into the New Year, guys, after this show airs. In between Christmas and New Year's, and the full version of this episode will drop just after New Year's for you guys. A week or so after that, we will be having our last episode of Late Night Chat episode 300. Yeah, it's bittersweet. It's going to be us along with the other 4 hosts of the channel live, all in person with each other. So that'll be a really fun one. I'm very much looking forward to that.
Oh, I bet you are.
One more go around for the Late Night Chat. But that doesn't mean that we're done with content here on the channel. Honestly, if you guys, it's important to mention that we do have a movie show that we do, Late Night at the Movies, that comes out twice a month roughly. With a couple of other hosts too. Julie, of course, as part of Late Night Chat, and Max, who's joined us by doing that, being a host on that show with us lately.
Max Tarantino, actually.
And if we're talking about movies and we're talking about TV content, make sure to check out Watching the Throne, which is our Game of Thrones show that we did. And that will be back later this year. We will be making a return when that new spinoff comes out, right? So
I'm ready. Got my right hand ready, right. Man. I'm ready to go.
And that's with our co-host Christina on that show as well, who's basically become the 3rd honorary co-host of that show with us as well. And that's kind of like we watch episode by episode and do deep dive conversations on Game of Thrones. And Jay actually just really got into the show this past year and a half. I think we caught up, watched all of the old Game of Thrones, and then watched all of House of the Dragon and commented on that, including this past season. Yeah, so that's been a super fun time. So if you guys, again, since we cover TV here, and those hosts, lists didn't really come into play here, Christina and Max, in terms of some of the other stuff we're covering here today. But I did want to give a quick shout out to them and those shows as well, because those have been newer shows that we've been really putting a lot of time into this past year as well, outside of late night chat.
A lot of different effort, yeah. A lot of different conversations, a lot of different chat, and a lot of different stuff, and it's the neat thing about it, right? You know?
Yeah, exactly. It's been nice to connect with so many people again that are
broadening my horizons.
First and foremost fans of these things, though, right?
Yeah, that's
like
the funny thing.
We love talking about this kind of stuff with people that are also equally, interested in this type of stuff. And then if you want to talk music, since we're going to be covering music here today as well, check out Late Night Mixtapes. That's my weekly mixtape that I drop every week here on Late Night Chat Network. And that's me going back and pulling up old hip hop mixtape days music that you can't even find half of this stuff online anymore. If you can, it's hard to come across. A lot of it hasn't been cleared in terms of samples for Spotify. Some of it slowly has started to over the last year or two. I know a lot of artists this past year finally got in their mixtapes on Spotify. Yeah, J. Cole.
Very confusing.
J. Cole was the most recent one. Jay sent me it, and he's like, "Whoa, you see this new tape from J. Cole?" Like, Jay, this came out like 20 years ago, not 20 years ago, like 15 years ago. And he's like, "Oh, really?" Because it'll come up in someone's feed that follows the artist, and it'll be like, "Oh, this is their new tape," but meanwhile, it's old music.
Well, yeah, and I never listened to it until I kind of met Nico. I've never really listened to the whole J. Cole thing and that whole scene.
Right.
Yeah,
but that's
got introduced to it by
it's
you.
a good thing. Yeah. People are discovering this music for the first time. But if you want to go and listen to some stuff and maybe discover some new music for yourself as well, you're into old school hip hop, especially in the mixtape era, go listen to Late Night Mixtapes, guys. I've been putting a lot of time. I know it may seem easy, but it's actually like to go through all the music and curate a list takes some time. So definitely go check that out. All right. So that covers all of those topics and things that we will be talking about today. But, as we go through our list, we're going to give you our top fives in all of those categories of the year that came out in 2024 of things we enjoyed for all those categories. We'll also be mentioning some honorable mentions sometimes along the way as well. And like I said, I'll be sharing our other co-host list that provided them to us as well. So a lot of great stuff to go through. And the only thing I didn't mention there that we're going to cover first here is podcasts. Now, Jay, you weren't really big up on podcasts other than podcasting with
literally just the podcasting this year, guys. I didn't get a chance to listen to any of the podcasts that I would normally listen to be honest with you. I've put in some share of time into listening to podcasts, but I don't know, nothing caught my ear that I liked, or not that so much that I liked, but just didn't catch me by surprise. I was listening to a lot more of a classic rock style music in its place, in the sense, when you're working, sometimes for me I need to have that music other than the podcast talking to me in the background. So I didn't get a chance to, unfortunately, go through any podcasts this year besides, like I said, our own podcast, which that's my number one pick anyways, always. So regardless, that's gonna never fail. But other than that, I gotta say I was a little a little low on the podcasting this year. All right. It's all good.
Yeah, right? That's all right. I'm sure you'll have plenty to talk about in the other categories anyways, which I know you do. We'll never get you to shut up about the TV category, I'm sure.
Oh, trust me, bro.
And then, we'll throw this out there right now, too, as a little teaser. Maybe in the new year, you might be also seeing some more additional TV content on the channel. So stay tuned on that one, honestly.
It'll be called TV for the what's the word I'm looking for? See? TV for the illiterate.
Okay.
Like me. So everybody
you could barely formulate a sentence there. So there you go.
Perfect. You know what I mean?
That'll be the intro of the show. So you just stutter.
Just keep filling it with fucking blanks, swearing words.
But let's get to top 5 podcasts though, because a couple of our co-hosts here did submit me some podcasts that they listened to this year. So let's go over theirs first here. So Lewis, one of our co-hosts on Late Night Chat, he provided me with this podcast list here. Coming in at number 5, no honorable mentions on this one. We got the Anti-Donna podcast, which I don't know what that is. Did you ever come across this one? Do you aware of this one, Anti-Donna?
I'd be scared if I was aware of something called Anti-Donna. But I can look it up. To be honest with you. Let's see what this is.
Yeah, why don't you look that one up while I go on here after the list? I'd be interested to hear what that is. And then you got History of the 90s coming in at number 4, which I believe may have been his pick last year as well as part of his top 5, if I'm not mistaken. I don't listen to that one, but I think he's talked about it before. And I think it may have even been in his top 5 list last year. So you're not going to see many differences with me with the podcast either, because the podcast that I do have time to listen to outside of doing our own it's my tried and true ones that I kind of revisit, that I'm like stuck to listening to every week because it's part of my, my ritual in that sense, right? Then we got the ongoing history of new music. Yeah, I know that's one I think he's definitely talked about as well. I should check out some of these. They sound interesting. And then you got number 2. That came in at number 3, ongoing history of new music. Coming in at number 2, you got Freedom, not threesome, like JT probably thinks he wrote here. it's Freedom, not threesome. Well, that's not as fun. Coming in at number 2.
I don't know who these comedians are.
Oh, so it's a comedy podcast, the Auntie Donna one?
It kind of looks like one, yeah.
Okay.
It just says a comedy the whole family can enjoy.
Okay.
Which is kind of interesting.
Okay.
In a weird way.
And then coming in at number 1 for Lewis's favorite podcast, always he puts here, and it is always his number 1, and that's Comedy Bang Bang. I don't listen to that, but I know a lot of people that are big fans of that podcast. I never really got into it. But yeah, those guys have been going strong for a long time, and they do like, those podcast shows. They do them in person as well. They do like live shows. Sometimes you can go to and experience that. I think Lewis has gone before. I know other people that I know have gone. I'm pretty sure he's gone as well. But yeah, Comedy Bang Bang. That's his number 1 podcast of the year. So once again, that's Auntie Donna podcast, history of the 90s, ongoing history of new music, Freedom, and coming in at number 1, Comedy Bang Bang. Those are his top 5 podcasts of 2024.
Yeah.
All right, and then we got Julie's here. I'll pull up Julie's top 5 list of here for podcasts. She's got a couple of honorable mentions here. We'll start off with. She's got Being Ian with Jordan. 2 Bears, 1 Cave. Always a great one to listen to. I definitely have had a lot of fun with that over the years. I didn't listen to them all that much this year. I feel like they've been doing less shows with each other, with those two, than they've been having a lot more guests on, I would say.
Yeah, I don't feel like the relationship is there anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, not as much, definitely.
There's something different about it, yeah.
Then you got those 2. Those are your honorable mentions. And then coming in at number 5, another podcast that's part of Tom Segura there, him and his wife, Your Mom's House. That's not bad too. I do enjoy that one. Yeah,
Your Mom's House.
I do like the clips that I come across on the internet, on Instagram there, right? So Your Mom's House coming in at number 5. Coming in at number 4, I don't know what this one is. Sergio Talks. I don't know what that is. Sergio Talks. Maybe look that one up. I'm interested to see what that's all about. Sergio Talks coming in at number 4 for Julie's top 5 favorite podcasts. Oh, also, I should have mentioned, she said podcast besides our own at the top of the list, right? So she had to throw that in, of course, as well.
Sergio Talks podcast. That's 3 boys with 3 different opinions. And how did the podcast of what the fuck is this? This is interesting. Hold on. So 3 boys with 3 different opinions. How did this podcast come to light? You ask. You ever find yourself talking to your friends and someone says, we should honestly just start a podcast? Yeah. Well, that's exactly.
That's what we did.
So join the chaos with Sergio alongside his co-hosts Matt and Cara as they attempt to maintain a sustainable conversation while unveiling the untold truths about the relationships,
there you go,
life, and men and women.
Sounds like our podcast in a lot of
basically
ways.
Yeah, it's like
most podcasts,
how they start off in that sense. But yeah, it's interesting. It's got I don't know how many episodes there is so far, but
and then coming in at number 3, we have The Morning Shift for Julie's favorite podcast. Then at number 2, you got That Library Show. And coming in at number 1, The Basement Yard. I haven't heard of any of these ones. That's interesting. I mean, I always know her comedy ones that she submits. That's usually, out of all of our co-hosts that submit podcasts to me every year, the only ones I usually recognize are the comedy podcasts, because I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts on YouTube anyways. I really enjoy a lot of the YouTube content that comes from these comedy podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but that just goes to show you the range of that podcasts have. You can talk about the most niche of subjects on podcasts, and there'll be an audience for it.
Santagato.
Which one's this?
That's The Basement Yard.
Okay, what's this about?
This one is about Basement Yard is a podcast ran by the guy himself, Joe. I would write along a description about what this podcast. I would write a long description about what this podcast will be about, but I'm not even sure. So enjoy it.
Well, there you go. Sounds like some random talk, right?
That's interesting. It's a comedy.
Okay.
So
Okay. So there you go. Top 5 for Julie for podcast for this year is once again Your Mom's House coming in number 5. Number 4, Sergio Talks. Number 3, The Morning Shift. Number 2, That Library Show. And number 1, The Basement Yard. So yeah, there you go. Hopefully you guys can learn about some new podcasts you can check out this way. That's why we kind of like have a fun time doing these lists as well, right? Sometimes I love these year-end lists because even I watch them on other stuff I listen to, and I usually come across some new things to check out as a result, right? So
yeah,
that's always fun. But let me just double check.
those sound really interesting in a sense. Some of those ones sound like basically what we're doing here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely, right?
I mean, like you said, most podcasts do come out the same way in that sense.
And then we got Rob that also submitted a list for podcasts here. He coming in at number 5 for Rob, The Ultimate Human.
Well,
is that about you, Jay?
Apparently, yeah, he likes to watch me a lot. So I don't think there's a podcast called The Ultimate Human because, I mean, if there was, it's not working well for Rob.
Yeah.
No. Love you, bro.
You know he watches these ones too, because that was a personal jab. Yeah, you knew he was gonna hear. Coming in at number 4, New Heights. Maybe these are like life, like kind of like
life-changing ones.
Yeah, because like a lot of people like positive affirmation type stuff, where it's like
maybe I'm rubbing off on people, bro.
Motivational kind of like types, because New Heights sounds like something like that would be like that, right? Like New Heights, like stuff to like goals, maybe.
Yeah. Or fixing your house. And
like he likes that kind of stuff too, right? So,
could be something like that, yeah.
Coming in number 3, I think one that you probably put him on to, Smart List, which was your number 1 podcast, I feel like, the year before.
Yeah, I don't even know if they did anything this year.
Did they not do anything
I don't know. I honestly, I haven't, after the television show came out and it was interesting that way, that quick little thing they did, that was it. I had enough. I got to see them all on screen, but at the end of the day, I looked at it and said, I mean, they might have. They can consistently come out with stuff Monday. They might not be all of them as well. I mean, it's showing up still under my podcast thing, so it looks like they did come out with some of them. So
okay, so there you go. So, and then you got
December 16th was this last one. So
I guess Bateman's kind of fitting them in between filming Carry On, I guess, this year.
Bateman's fitting him in. They all have to work around his schedule.
That's right. Dude. I know. I mean, he's the most popular one, right? Out of all
he's been on television a lot longer.
Well, no, Arnett does a lot of stuff too.
But Arnett does more voice stuff, and I don't think it's as relatable to we don't get to see the
he's not out here making shows.
We don't get to see all the plastic surgery that fucking Bateman puts himself through, because if he hasn't put himself through enough plastic surgery,
is that right?
Well, I mean, come on, dude. You watch Carry On, right? Yeah. He doesn't look that young, I don't think, bro. Remember, he's got to be in his 50s or something right now.
Speaking about carrying on, moving on. Okay, number 2. Coming in at number 2, we got Mel Robbins, who I just looked her up. She's like a motivational speaker and like lawyer, author type person. So yeah, maybe there's some interesting things being discussed on that.
He's learning.
American presenter and author. Yeah, look at this guy. Look at this guy's the educational podcast that he's listening to. This is crazy. It sounds like
hopefully he's taking some pointers.
And then coming in at number 1. Coming in at number 1, Bad Parents. Bad Parents. So there you go. So once again, his top 5, Rob's, our other co-host, top 5.
That sounds like a television show.
Is coming in at number 5. We got The Ultimate Human. Coming in at number 4, New Heights. Coming in at number 3, Smart List. Coming in at number 2, Mel Robbins. And coming in at number 1, we got Bad Parents for Rob's top 5 podcasts.
Nice.
So there you go. And then likewise, like you, I guess Leslie doesn't listen to other podcasts or failed to mention anything to me.
I'm surprised she does listen to it.
She used to listen to a lot of true crime that I know of. But anyway, she didn't submit me anything this year, so we got nothing for her. So. All right. So my top 5 podcasts.
I always wait to hear Nico's because they're always interesting. You can always take something from these ones. I mean, Rob's are pretty interesting too, in a sense. It's like if he's getting some, self-help out of those, and
I don't know if that's the case.
Do it yourself,
yeah. Like it
does sound like it. It sounds really good.
But I mean,
I'm gonna have to ask them off screen what they're about.
Yeah, exactly. So look into those guys. I mean, I'm sure there's some good stuff there. And also, what I can see from the podcast that everyone has mentioned. At least looking up the few that we have, it's all varying different types of subjects. So that's what's great about it, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's about what people relate to, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
listen, coming in at number 5, I'm not even going to mention it. Listen, honorable mentions, I'll say it's comedy podcast for me, but it's more YouTube. So I didn't, even though they're podcasts, like we are on YouTube generally, basically for the most part here, we don't put out the audio version of the show anymore. Stay tuned. Maybe we will at some point. But basically, like comedy podcasts for me outside of doing this are probably the things I listen to the most for honorable mentions outside of this top 5 list. So, the Bad Friends podcast with Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino is a good one that I like. Sometimes, depending on who the guest is, I'll watch Rogan. I wouldn't say he's a comedy podcast, but it's like.
But you can still hear these as audio as well.
Oh yeah, of course. They have both. But I just tend to personally enjoy watching the video version of these podcasts more.
Yeah, you want to see facial expressions. Exactly. You want to see stuff like that.
I think honestly, I know it's not maybe as easy for people unless they have YouTube Premium to just close it and listen to audio. They actually have to sit there and watch it. But I prefer having that. Sometimes I'll just listen to it.
But you don't have Premium in a sense, so you can just.
No, but Premium you can minimize it, and the YouTube will keep playing. Like, with YouTube Premium, if you minimize the actual video, you will still be able to listen to it. If you minimize the video the other way, like if the app closes.
Yeah, but YouTube Music app is the same way. You can do that with the podcast and listen that way, can't you?
With the podcast, probably. But I'm talking about the video.
Yeah.
The video, once you close it,
you're not going
to hear it, right? So,
but you like to watch the video.
I do, but then sometimes I'll just have the video on and I'll just listen to the audio of the video. I don't actually have to watch. I'll look over every now and then. I'll just have it kind of like playing.
Yeah, right? I hear you.
So that's how I prefer to do it. But yeah, a lot of, depending on who the guest is, there's a lot of those comedy podcasts I'll listen to. Like I'll see some Rogan depending who's on there. Like I said, the Bad Friends podcast is good. These Two Bears, One Cave, sometimes I'll watch. I actually watch a lot of YouTube videos, but this is now getting into YouTube about them analyzing comedy podcasts and like comedy in general. Like the Shane Gillis podcast, Shane and Matt's Secret Podcast or whatever. That one's pretty good. I've watched some of those this year. So yeah, so it's a lot of comedy podcasts that I'm really into for honorable mentions. I'll mention that. Right, but coming in at number 5, and I'm not putting it at number 1, but I did want to mention it like everybody else here has mentioned. I'm going to throw Late Night Chat in there because you know why? I just want to give all of us a pat on our backs because this is, like I said, this has been one of our best years ever of doing it has been. It's probably been our best through statistics and just in terms of creativity. And listen, we had some great times for doing other kinds of great stuff during the pandemic when we first started this in the YouTube. But I just feel like even with ending the show in the new year, I really have a good outlook, a positive outlook. I'm having a positive outlook on things moving forward, stuff to come down the line. And I think that, between the Late Night Chat continuing throughout the year, even though we changed, the schedule around and the frequency and those shows came out in, was able to free up some people's time. People were able to enjoy stuff outside of doing the podcast as well. Got a girlfriend? Hey, listen.
It worked, bro.
There you go.
Thanks, dude.
So there you go. So that's what I'm saying. So it's also like going out and having more life experiences type stuff to kind of come and be more re-energized and like, you know what I mean? Like kind of like, putting our best foot forward and getting more interested in getting together and talking about these things because we weren't doing it. We were just smarter about the way we scheduled things. At least I can speak for myself in that sense, right? So
your scheduling is impeccable. I don't know how you do it. And like I said, with doing all the shows and just making it work, especially at this time of the fucking year.
Right.
Dude, I'm patting you on the back yourself, bro. Honestly.
And I mean, like, and I
not easy.
Shame on me. I didn't even mention Comic Shop Talk because this comics isn't something we cover on this show here, but make sure to check out the feed, guys. By this time, when this episode's out, we'll have already had our year-end media review version of the Comic Shop Talk, which is the Comic Shop Talk Awards. And that's me and Chris. And you got to remember this, Jay. Chris, honestly, in terms of the even output of the other hosts on the channel, he's put out more shows probably this year than like everybody, it seems like, honestly, because he's on a weekly basis.
You don't have those stats this year, do you?
That's for the episode 300. That's for episode 300, those stats.
Mine went down from last year,
because Chris is weekly. He's on weekly.
Yeah, right? I know. It is. He's probably surpassing me.
Other than myself, he's probably done the most shows on the channel this year. That's what I mean.
He's like, as I said, because I'm doing them only every 2 weeks now, right? So it's totally different.
So he's putting out these Comic Shop Talks with me weekly this year. But you also did Watching the Throne. You did lots of stuff this year too. And that's not about who did more. I'm just saying.
I know.
I just really wanted to give a shout out to Chris too on Comic Shop Talk because like week in and week out, he talks.
We kind of leave him under the radar. I always like to tag him in the reels and stuff like that, but we always tend to leave them under the radar, which I find is kind of, in my part, I'll be honest. I give you guys a big shout out, like when I try to promote doing my promotions the right way on the show. But honestly, yeah,
Think of
Chris,
it
he
though.
puts a lot of fucking work into it. If Nico's doing that much for Comic Shop Talk alone, that means Chris is doing equal amount,
Exactly.
if not more, in that
Exactly.
sense. So we forget to realize how big and a big part of the channel he is. I think he doesn't realize that how much it actually,
Right.
when you come and you sit down and think about
Right.
it actually means.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna make him cry on episode 300. He should be there in person, to be honest with you. If that, if he can put up with us in the room.
I put the invite out, but I don't know if
If he can put up with us in a room,
I think it's more that than anything.
I think so too. At a certain, Chris has got a certain taste, and I don't think
he's
we're
a
all one of them.
nonsense fella.
Yeah. If I make him tear up, I don't know, man. That means
no, but
get him all emotional.
I don't honestly, like, because we always show love to our fellow co-hosts of Late Night Chat, but put it in perspective. Like, he really, he has been there for 3 years. He's been doing a weekly show with me,
and he flies under the cover, like you don't even
Yeah.
notice him there. Like, he's so quiet. He
listen,
comes on the drunk cast.
We tried to leave. We tried to do Late Night Collectors Community. That didn't work out. We came back.
Yeah, he came back, and it's like, fuck, man. It's like these guys, Chris, and he's been trucking through it too, man. Like it's a lot.
Yeah, he's a big part of the network. So I did want to throw that out.
How many shows you guys got now altogether? Do you know?
A Comic Shop Talk?
Yeah.
We just recorded earlier today before our Christmas break, episode 159 of Comic Shop Talk. 159 plus we had 3 annual Comic Shop Talk awards. So every week, 52 weeks in a year, you get a comic. So basically, 162 episodes of Comic Shop Talk we've done over 3 years.
Fucking guys, eh?
We've done over half the number of late night chats.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah,
because it's a weekly basis show as well, right? So that's what I mean. So even though you guys aren't in comics, like that's why I wanted to kind of bring that. I wanted to mention him as well in this whole late night chat thing, because we've had a great year between all of our shows that we do collectively, and just like reaching new audiences, honestly. So it's been great. So thank you once again for everybody. And I had to put us in the top 5 because I think this is one of been our best years. And with all these exciting things on the horizon coming in the new year, I know it feels weird because we're ending late night chat, but we're not ending this channel. So we're just kind of, again, pivoting and changing the direction of the channel as we've done a couple of times across a few years. Make it interesting.
We've had to adapt, right? I mean, we've had to adapt so much. I mean, we literally went through COVID. That's
right.
And then just had to adapt that way.
Right.
We adapt to any sort of diseases fucking internet gives us. So we're good.
Yeah. So there you go. So I had to put us in at number 5. Coming in at number 4, though, is one that I'm kind of watching more frequently now. Is the Big Picture podcast. Now, this is part of the Ringer Network. This is hosted by mostly Sean Fennessy. He's from the Rewatchables podcast that I know you've heard us talk about before. As well. He's part of the Ringer Network and the Ringer Movies kind of YouTube channel now where this show comes out, The Big Picture. And they've kind of more leaned into doing more video content as well over the last year or two. They were mostly just audio podcasts before that, but now they're doing more video content.
Mm-hmm.
And Amanda Dobbins is I think the other co-host with him on there as well, if I'm not mistaken. I know it's Amanda. Let me just double check because I do want to get this right. But yeah, it is his weekly movie conversation show that he does. So it's like it kind of keeps up to date with all new movies that are coming out that he talks about that he's been watching week to week. So yeah, it's a weekly new movie kind of check-in. I think you usually do 1 or 2 shows a week that usually come out, and they're always about different topics. My favorite of those being, and I hope that we can do something similar and bite this idea off of them as a result on our show, our Late Night at the Movies. I've seen other podcasts do this as well. It's not necessarily an original idea, I think, in their case either. They do like movie draft shows where they pick a year of film. So let's say, I don't know, 1993. And they'll look at all the movies that came out during that year and they'll draft for a list. So they'll be like
a pool.
Yeah. Exactly. It's kind of fun. So by the end of it, they have like 5 movies or whatever. You have different categories, like pick a horror movie, pick a comedy movie that came out that year. So, in any given year, like we used to do with the battles, there's only so many good things that have come out that year that you may want to pick.
Yeah.
Remember when we used to do the battles for songs? Yeah. Same thing. So they just kind of draft movies, which is a lot of fun there. And like a lot of different types of guests from the Ringer Network. Chris Ryan comes on there from the Rewatchables as well. Like there's a lot of people that come on that show that he talks about film with, and industry people. He also interviews people in the industry as well. This past week, he just talked with. I think he talked with Richard Gere recently on there about his career, because he's like 80 or something now, I think, and he was talking about like his career in film. I think along with him, he's getting up there in age. I think that's how old he is now. And then he just talked about he talked to another a director as well this past week. What's his name? James Cameron.
Okay.
He talked to James Cameron, of course, Terminator, and a bunch of other guys, Titanic, a bunch of great movies that he's worked on. So sometimes we'll have really good, interesting people on there as well. So that's the big picture. I do like that show. And then coming in at number 3, of course, this is a mainstay on my list every year. It's 11 o'clock comics, followed with at number 2, iFanboy, which are my 2 comic book podcasts that I listen to outside of doing the comic book podcast that I do with Chris, Comic Shop Talk week to week. iFanboy is kind of more, they keep up to date with the weekly new releases, like kind of what we do on Comic Shop Talk. They're like the new release comic book conversation show. And 11 o'clock comics is kind of, they talk about all kinds of different comics that they read week to week. Like they kind of cover the full spectrum. They can be reading old stuff, new stuff, whatever stuff that they've recently read that they want to talk about. Yeah. So that's coming in at number 4 for number 3 and 2, 11 o'clock comics at number 3, and iFanboy at number 2. Those are my mainstay comic book podcast. So if you guys are into comic books other than Comic Shop Talk, make sure to check out these ones. I highly recommend both of them. They're very enjoyable.
Nice.
And then coming in number 1, this was a big year for me listening to the Rewatchables podcast. Like I said, the aforementioned Sean Fennessy, who's one of the hosts from the Big Picture podcast that I just talked about, also features on here. But Bill Simmons, the sports columnist guy, who the Ringer is his whole podcast network that he had a huge deal when he went over to Spotify. He's the main host, and then there's people that cycle in and out. Like he has a revolving group of co-hosts essentially, just like we do on Late Night Chat, where you're the mainstay. Basically, Bill Simmons is the mainstay on that show, and that's, again, we took a lot of inspiration from their podcast when we started doing Late Night at the Movies in terms of some of the categories that we were using and stuff like that. But I just think they're one of the best ones to do it out there. Every week they drop an episode. I have a lot of fun watching them. I really have come to like several of the different people that they have on there that are hosts. Honestly, almost all of them I really enjoy that they bring on there.
For years you talked to me about this. I still haven't got it. Because
it's a great show.
Yeah, I feel like because you need to watch that one to kind of get it too at the same time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're funny. I mean, they crack me up, and like there's ongoing kind of jokes, like, on the show, like that they kind of like different people will make as they make their appearances on there. And what they do is every week they choose a movie, and they're calling that a rewatchable film. It's like one of those movies that you can just throw on the TV and you can't, or you come across on cable.
Yeah.
You might watch the last half an hour, but you can't pull, you can't stop yourself from watching it. It's a rewatchable movie, like one that you may have seen 10 or 20 times because it's your favorite movie ever, or one that you just might find something very interesting about, or a performance that you really enjoy that you run it back. And I think this year is a big year for me watching movies. Honestly, I've seen a lot more movies than I did TV shows this year. But that's also because of my interest in doing the show that we've been doing this year and talking about movies a lot more with you guys. So as a result, and as a result of listening to this podcast, I was getting all kinds of recommendations and things I could watch week to week, or if there'd be shows. Even if I haven't watched the movie that they're talking about, I listen to the show, because it's an enjoyable show just to hear them talk about the movie. And a lot of the times it gets me interested in checking out the movie that they're suggesting on the show, that they're saying that is a rewatchable one.
Yeah.
And they basically just go through a bunch of categories and highlight like different things that they like about the film, like from quotes and scenes and, like things, some certain stuff like that we cover on our show as well. But also other kind of like more like interesting categories that they have, right, that they've made up along the time that they've done the show. So yeah, I just really appreciate it. I think it's really well done. It's not all like snobby films that they're talking about. They'll watch ones that, they'll watch an action film, a cheesy 80s movie. It doesn't matter. As long as two or three of the hosts that are on that any given episode are interested or enjoy that film, they will talk about it. So I really like that one. And it's honestly like between that and doing the movie show this year, it's been a really hell of a fun time for movies for me this past year, and going to see some movies with you guys. It's been good, man. Like I've been honestly watching movies and talking about film and really kind of trying to do my homework and watch a lot of good stuff that I've never seen this past year. It's been one of my hobbies. I've been enjoying it a lot. And Rewatchables podcast has been right there along for the ride.
I know I've had an art when it comes to rewatching movies. Watching movies for the first time, because we're looking at it a different perspective. I think it gives me a harder time to concentrate on the actual film itself, right? For what it's worth in that sense, instead of looking at it as almost like critiquing it every little fucking along the way.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes it can get a fucking annoying that way, but you tend to learn how to adapt, I guess.
Exactly.
Stuff you might have to watch it a second time or whatever because of that reason, right?
Yeah because I feel like that's kind of bled into us doing comic shop talk sometimes too, right? Which is why I like to make sure I read other comics outside of the comics that we talk about on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really have to go and talk about or critique them in that sense, you know what I mean? Because sometimes it does ruin it in some aspects as well if you have to go in, because now when you go and watch a film, in the back of your mind, you're always looking at it with that critiquer kind of hat on, a critic hat on a little bit now, right?
Always,
so listen, it's fun and it's not at the same time. But sometimes I'll watch a movie and I'll come on, as we'll exchange things. Me and Max normally in the chat, we'll talk about 100 messages later. We'll both be vibing on something that we've watched and both enjoy or have our own opinions on certain stuff. Or when we do the show as well. And actually doing the show has been fun too, because there's been picks that Julie and you have picked and Max that I would never watch some of these movies otherwise. So It's actually been fun because it's forced me to actually not only revisit some movies I haven't seen in a long time, but also discover some new movies for the first time.
Yeah.
And that's why I really like this podcast. So and it's kind of given us a lot of inspiration in doing what we do in terms of late night at the movies. So once again, my top five podcasts, guys, and then we'll move on to the next category here. We got coming in at number 5, Late Night Chat. Of course, thank you to everybody out there. Again, it's been a great year.
Mm-hmm.
All the hosts, all the audience, everyone. And coming in at number 4, The Big Picture Podcast. Coming in at number 3, 11 O'Clock Comics. Coming in at number 2, iFanboy. And coming in at number 1, Rewatchable. So there you go. As you can see from my podcast there, it's all movies and comics there that I've been listening to this year around in my ears. And Spotify told me that during my wrap for the year that I spent 17,000 hours listening to podcasts this year, I believe was the statistic. I don't know if that's real or not.
Yeah, you know what? They're pretty dead on trust me. Especially if you're just listening, even in the background,
or just having it on,
right. I mean, regardless, not just that you've been playing it, right? It'll count the time, and it's not this rap is getting better and better.
So there you go. That's my stat on the podcast front this year. So
nice.
Stuff.